As we go to air tonight, Vladimir Putin's forces are continuing their advance across Ukraine. More than 1 million Ukrainians have fled the country, while in a frightening development, fire tore through a complex housing Europe's largest nuclear power plant in the country's south. Now, if that is not the worst and most heinous form of terrorism, I don't know what is. I want to take you live now to Kyiv to speak with Inna Sovsun, a member of Ukraine's parliament. Inna, thank you so much for accepting my invitation. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thanks for inviting.
What's the situation on the ground in Kyiv, firstly, and then tell us a little bit about what you've heard in terms of what's happening at this nuclear power station.
Well, the situation in Kyiv is more or less stable, if you can call it this way. So the city is well protected on all the major entrances. The major battles are taking place on the towns and villages around Kyiv. Some of those are heavily damaged, like the towns of Bucha, the town of Hostomel, but the Russians didn't manage to get a hold of those. So the initial plan of taking the city of Kyiv within the first 24 hours by landing troops in the airport north of the city have failed. So now they are continuing some battles around Kyiv, but they are not even trying to get closer to Kyiv. And if you have heard on the news about this large 60 kilometers convoy moving from the north, from Belarus to Kyiv, it has basically been stalled. It's not moving forward. So the situation in Kyiv is, again, more or less quiet. We are under curfew, so people only can go outside for a couple of hours a day. The city feels rather empty. There are lots of checkpoints on the streets, particularly on the entrances and on the major roads. You have to show your documents every now and then. There is lots of police, lots of territorial defense. But apart from, I think we had one explosion over Kyiv during the last night, and that was the same the night before. So the situation in Kyiv is more or less stable. But the situation in, as you were reporting, Zaporizhia nuclear power station is just terrifying. This is actually the second nuclear power station that the Russians are trying to take over. They have been holding control over Chernobyl nuclear power station just north of Kyiv for a week now. So apparently this is a nuclear terrorist state, and Putin is a nuclear terrorist. And that is why we are asking for the West to step in and to save Ukraine, our lives, and also actually the whole world. Because you see, they're just shooting indiscriminately at the buildings of the nuclear power station. They don't care about the results. We are actually lucky that the sarcophag, the major buildings with the nuclear elements in it were not hit, but they can hit them anytime. And that is why we're asking for a no-fly zone over Ukraine to make sure that they do not come with a larger bomb and explode it in our nuclear power stations. Not to mention that would actually save thousands of civilians' lives who are under heavy bombardments from air in the city of Kharkiv, my native city. They're under heavy bombardments from air for 4 days in a row right now.
It's clearly the case that what he is doing to Ukraine right from the get-go is simply internationally unacceptable. But what has occurred in the last 24 hours, you're right, you use the words terrorism. That's exactly what he has stooped to, and it is heinous. What are you wanting the United States and the UK and other of the major Western powers to do from here?
So in 1994, Ukraine did have a nuclear weapon from the Soviet times. We gave that nuclear weapon up because we were promised security assurances from the West, from the United States, from the United Kingdom, from the European powers. And right now we feel that we have been betrayed. Right now we are hearing excuses why no one can establish a no-fly zone over Ukraine. But then the question is, why then did we give up our nuclear weapon? Because we were truly believing that the West would keep its promises. And that is what we are asking from the West, just to keep its promises to Ukraine. And frankly speaking, just hold to its values of protecting human lives and basic human decency. And that's why we are asking to help us establish no-fly zone over Ukraine, because Ukrainian army is extremely resilient, extremely strong. The level of resistance on the ground is unprecedented. And I'm sure that with the no-fly zone, this war will be over pretty soon with Ukraine's victory. But if Putin continues to bombard our cities from air, killing our children, Ukrainians overall, then this war will continue for much longer and with much more casualties. So we're just asking the West to fulfill its promises to Ukraine and to assure a no-fly zone over Ukraine.
We don't know too much about your country, but boy, oh boy, in the last week, we've learned a lot about the Ukrainian people. And I can only say on behalf of my viewers that you people have been extraordinarily inspirational. You've got passion. You've got incredible courage. Do you think Ukraine can still win this war despite the fact that the capital is surrounded by Russian troops?
Oh, I have no doubt. We don't have anywhere to go. We are staying in, we are staying put. We actually had an emergency parliamentary session yesterday in Kyiv. So yes, I am sure we can win despite this massive attack on our sovereign territory. But the question is just with how many casualties? That is the major question. And that is truly up to the West, like with the Western support to the army, with the Western support in terms of establishing a no-fly zone. I have no doubts we shall win. I've seen people blowing up Molotov cocktails next to the tanks so that, to fight the tanks. I've seen people who are working in IT, the baristas in fancy coffee houses taking arms and patrolling the streets. Well, gosh, I have seen my dad taking the arms and patrolling the streets in the area where he is living right now. So I am have so much trust in the Ukrainian people. I'm just right now doing what I can, is asking for the world to step in and do the same, help fight for the civilized world and for the human decency.
You people are incredibly resolute and so admirable. I wish you all the very best. And thank you very much for spending some time communicating with my Australian audience. Inna, thank you.
Thank
you. Inna Sovsun, live there from Kyiv. Can you believe that? It's just incredible. We can win, she says. Outside of Kyiv, the place is complete and utter mess.